The elevator, the elevator hummed softly as it climbed toward the 57th floor of RavenCorp. Each floor number that blinked past on the panel made my pulse skip. By the time it hit 57, I'd repeated the same sentence in my head 100 times. You're not here for him. You're here for the truth. The doors slid open with a polished chime, spilling light across black marble floors and glass walls that looked expensive enough to reflect every bad decision I'd ever made. This was the top of the corporate food chain, sleek, sterile, and terrifyingly quiet, and somewhere in that silence waited Ethan Raven. I'd seen his face before, of course, newspapers, financial magazines, a few ruthless interviews where he looked straight at the camera like he was bored by the world. But none of those photos did justice to the energy that filled the air when he was in the same building. The moment I stepped out, I felt it. A woman at the reception desk glanced up. Her blazer was perfect, her smile was. "You must be the new assistant," she said. "Aria Collins." I introduced myself, voice steadier than I felt. She looked me over, not unkindly, but with the kind of curiosity people reserve for incoming storm clouds. "Good luck," she said, almost softly. Before I could ask what that meant, a voice slid through the silence like silk over glass. "Miss Collins." My body froze before my brain caught up. Ethan Raven stood a few feet away, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a tablet. Up close, he looked even more untouchable, sharp lines, calm eyes, and an expression that said he hadn't smiled in a decade and didn't plan to start now. "Yes, sir," I managed. He gave me a once-over that somehow wasn't inappropriate, but still made every nerve in my spine sit up straight. "You're late," he said. I blinked. It's 8:55, my start time is 9. The meeting started early. He turned and started walking. "Follow me." So I did past rows of silent employees and glass offices that all seemed to watch. He stopped near the window that framed half of Manhattan and turned back to me. "You came from Hensley & Co., he said, glancing at the papers in his hand. "Your resume says you were one of their best." "I try to be." "Try harder," he said simply. "I don't keep assistants who try, I keep the ones who deliver." He turned away again, the city's skyline reflected in the glass behind him like a crown. "Coffee," he said, "black, no sugar." I swallowed the sharp reply sitting on my tongue and nodded. "Right away." As I left the office, I couldn't help thinking how easily arrogance looked like confidence when it wore a $3,000 suit. By 10, I'd learned 2 things. Ethan Raven hated small talk and loved deadlines. By noon, I'd also learned he noticed everything. Every missed comma in an email, every pause before I spoke, even the tiny tremor in my voice when he said Miss Collins in that steady, deep tone. When he finally stepped into a meeting, I collapsed at my desk and texted Lily. "Me, first day at Hell HQ." "Lily, does the devil wear Armani?" Smirking face. "Me, unfortunately, yes, and he's terrifyingly punctual." "Lily, you got this. Just remember why you're there." Right, why I was here. Not to impress him, not to make a name for myself. I was here for my father. By 1 o'clock, I'd almost convinced myself I could get through the day without incident, until the elevator doors opened again. She walked out like she owned the world. Tall, perfect, with a smile you could cut yourself on. Her heels clicked across the marble, drawing every gaze in a 10-foot radius. "Excuse me," I said as she headed straight for Ethan's office. "Do you have an appointment?" She didn't even slow down. "No," she said, "I don't need one." She opened the door and disappeared inside. The air changed. Through the glass, I could see them, Ethan standing, his posture rigid, hers fluid and familiar. They talked, and though I couldn't hear them, I could feel the tension. Then she laughed, soft, cruel, the kind of laugh that carried history. After a few minutes, the door opened. She paused by my desk, giving me a once-over. "You must be the new assistant," she said, smiling without warmth. "Yes," I said, trying not to sound defensive. "She's prettier than the last one," she said over her shoulder to Ethan. "That's new." Ethan didn't respond. She left, perfume lingering like smoke. When the elevator doors closed behind her, I finally exhaled. Should I schedule her for? No, his tone was clipped. Miss Linton won't be coming back. The name struck me, Linton. The tabloids had loved her once. His ex-fiancée. The one who'd left him weeks before their wedding, claiming he was incapable of love. Oh, I murmured. I see. Ethan's gaze snapped to mine, cool and warning. I don't pay you to see Miss Collins. Right, of course not. He turned back to his work, but for a brief moment, his reflection in the glass didn't look like a man made of ice. It looked tired. And that was dangerous, because sympathy was the first crack in the armor I'd promised to keep. When I got home that night, I found myself sitting by the window of my tiny apartment, city lights flickering against the dark. My laptop screen glowed faintly with the folder I swore I'd never open again. RavenCorp Internal, 2012. The year everything fell apart. My father, Daniel Collins, had been one of RavenCorp's founding partners, a man who believed business could be built on trust, right up until Ethan's father accused him of embezzlement. Overnight, everything was gone. His reputation, our home, his health. He'd spent the rest of his life trying to prove his innocence. And when he died, all I had left were questions, and a drive full of encrypted files from the company that ruined us. I took a slow breath, staring out at the city. I'll find it, Dad, I whispered. Whatever they did to you, I'll find it. My phone buzzed, a message from Lily. Lily, survived day one, or buried under spreadsheets already. Me, survived barely. Lily, you'll get used to it, just don't get too close to him, okay? I typed back, don't worry, I won't. But as I looked at the faint reflection of Ethan's face still etched in my mind, those steady gray eyes, that unreadable calm, something inside me whispered the one thing I didn't want to admit. I already am, 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the walls of RavenCorp to start feeling less like glass and more like a mirror. Every reflection, every polished surface, threw my face back at me with the same reminder, you don't belong here. But pretending. That I was good at. I'd mastered Ethan Raven's impossible standards. His black coffee, his silent signals, his razor-sharp emails that could flay an entire department with a single word. And most dangerously, I'd learned how to read him. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words carried weight, the kind that made people forget to breathe. I'd watched board members, executives, entire teams shrink under that calm, surgical tone. I told myself I was immune. Until the day I was. The meeting room looked like a crime scene, half a dozen laptops open, people sweating in silence, a projector humming softly as slides clicked past. Ethan stood at the head of the long glass table, black suit immaculate, expression unreadable. Next quarter's projections, he said, voice low but cutting. Collins, you compiled the data. I nodded, sliding the report forward. Yes, sir, everything's cross-checked and verified. He glanced at the first page, eyes narrowing just slightly. These numbers don't match what the finance team submitted. My stomach twisted. They should, I triple-checked. Then you triple-checked the wrong data. His words hit like a slap. The room went deathly quiet. Someone coughed. Another pretended to sip coffee just to avoid eye contact. I can recheck right now, I managed, pulse roaring in my ears. Ethan set the folder down with deliberate calm. You were hired to be precise, Miss Collins, not almost precise. A flush crept up my neck. Every pair of eyes in that room felt like heat lamps. I wanted to disappear, but I met his gaze instead, stupidly, stubbornly. I understand, sir. It won't happen again. It shouldn't have happened the first time. That did it, my hands clenched under the table. He turned to the board, voice smooth again, already moving on. Next slide. And just like that, I was invisible. By the time the meeting ended, I was running on fumes and pride. I waited for everyone to leave before gathering my things. My throat felt tight, but I swallowed it down. He hadn't meant to humiliate me, I told myself. He was just like that. Still, when I walked past his office an hour later, I didn't expect him to stop me. "Miss Collins." I froze. He was leaning against the edge of his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened just enough to look human. The sharpness from earlier was gone, replaced by something quieter, something that almost looked like regret. "Close the door," he said. I did. He didn't look at me right away. "The report, it wasn't your fault." I blinked. "Excuse me." He rubbed the bridge of his nose, a rare crack in the armor. "Finance uploaded a revised sheet late last night. You weren't copied on the update." Oh. A part of me wanted to say thank you, but the larger part, the bruised, humiliated one, wasn't ready to let it go that easily. So I was right. "You were," he said quietly, "and I was wrong." I stared at him, caught off guard. "Did you just say?" "Yes," he interrupted. "Don't make me repeat it." Something inside me loosened, just a little. The apology was subtle, reluctant, but real. He wasn't the kind of man who apologized easily, maybe not ever. And somehow, that made it worse. "I'm sorry I raised my voice," he added after a pause. "It was unprofessional." I let out a slow breath. "That's surprisingly self-aware of you, Mr. Raven." His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to make my heart forget its rhythm. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. I tilted my head. "And what exactly did you expect?" He looked straight at me then, those calm, gray eyes seeing far too much. "Someone who flinches." I didn't move. I don't flinch easily. "I've noticed." The silence that followed was too long, too charged. He looked away first, straightening his tie. "Get some rest, Miss Collins. It's been a long day." "Yes, sir." I turned to go, but his voice stopped me at the door. "For what it's worth," he said, "your father would have been proud." I froze mid-step. The words sank like ice through my veins. I turned slowly. "What did you say?" He met my eyes again, unreadable, cautious. "You listed him as your reference. Daniel Collins, correct?" My pulse stuttered. "Yes, he passed away." "I know," Ethan said quietly. "He worked here when I was younger. My father spoke of him often." That lie slid out so smoothly, I almost believed it. My father spoke of him often. Sure, probably right before destroying his life. "I see," I managed. "He spoke highly of RavenCorp too." His gaze lingered on me, searching, but I kept my face still. I'd had years to practice that expression, polite, composed, unreadable. After a moment, he nodded. "Good night, Miss Collins." I stepped into the hall before my mask could crack. The office was empty when I finally left. Outside, the city was slick with rain, lights blurring into the streets like watercolor. I stopped under the awning, breath fogging the air. For 2 weeks, I'd told myself I could do this, that I could stay detached, professional, cold. But hearing him say my father's name out loud, it burned. Because now I knew one thing for sure. Ethan Raven might not have framed my father himself, but he was his father's son. And if I was going to find the truth, I'd have to get close enough to destroy him from the inside. Even if it meant falling for him first. Airports always smelled like beginnings. And endings. I wasn't sure which one this trip would be. RavenCorp's expansion pitch in Chicago was supposed to be routine, numbers, investors, polite applause. But when Ethan told me I'd be coming along as his assistant, I felt that quiet twist in my chest that I'd been pretending didn't exist. It was just a trip, a few days, professional. Except nothing about Ethan Raven ever stayed professional for long. The conference center gleamed like money, chrome, glass, and the smell of overpriced coffee. I spent the morning running between presentations, coordinating schedules, and trying not to trip in my heels while Ethan moved through the chaos like he owned it. Everywhere he went, people shifted, either to get closer or to get out of his way. By afternoon, we were in the main boardroom, surrounded by investors and executives. The man across the table, some Midwestern partner named Briggs, was older, loud, and the kind of person who mistook rudeness for charm. "Miss Collins," he said as I handed out the proposal files, his tone dripping condescension. "I assume you actually understand these figures you typed up, or did the big man here spoon-feed them to you?" Laughter rippled around the table. I froze, the edges of the papers digging into my fingers. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Ethan's pen clicked once, then stopped. When he spoke, his voice was ice. "Mr. Briggs," he said evenly, "the figures she typed up happened to be projections she compiled, analyzed, and corrected after your firm's initial data errors. If you have a question about her competence, you can take it up with me." The room fell silent. Briggs blinked, color rising in his face. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," Ethan interrupted. "And that's the last time you'll speak to my employee that way." My breath caught. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said my employee. Calm, possessive, like I wasn't invisible for once. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that, the air thick with awkwardness. When it was over, I gathered the papers with shaking hands, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Hours later, after the presentations, the sky outside turned soft and gray. The rest of the team went to dinner, but I stayed behind in the quiet conference room, finishing the last report. Or at least pretending to. The door opened. His footsteps were unmistakable, unhurried, confident, controlled. "I thought you'd gone to dinner," I said without looking up. "I thought you would have." I finally looked up. He stood by the window, city lights reflected in the glass, tie loosened just enough to make him look less like a CEO and more like a person. "I had work to finish," I said. "So did I." He moved closer, hands in his pockets. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air hummed softly between us, not uncomfortable, just aware. "You didn't have to defend me today," I said finally. "I've dealt with people like Briggs before." He studied me. "You shouldn't have to." His tone was quiet, but it carried a kind of finality that made my throat tighten. "You surprised me, Miss Collins," he added. "How so?" "You didn't flinch. You never do." I gave a small, tired smile. Maybe I'm just used to being underestimated. His gaze softened, barely. That's not something anyone should have to get used to. For a second, something flickered in his eyes, something almost human. Then it was gone, replaced by the calm, composed mask I knew too well. I turned back to my laptop. "We should probably finish these numbers before tomorrow's pitch." He nodded, moving beside me. The room felt smaller with him that close. The glow from the screen painted faint light on his face, all sharp lines and shadows. I tried to focus on the spreadsheet, but his sleeve brushed my arm as he reached for a pen, and my mind went completely blank. He paused, noticing. "You're shaking," he said softly. "It's just been a long day," I lied. He didn't believe me. I could tell. Without a word, he took off his suit jacket and draped it over the back of my chair. "Then take a break." "I can't. The files." "Can wait." The sound of his voice, low, certain, hit somewhere I didn't have defenses for. When I finally looked at him, he wasn't my boss. Not in that moment. He was just a man standing too close, trying too hard not to care. Our eyes met, one of those quiet collisions that happen in the spaces between words. And for a breath, I thought he might actually say something real. But then he stepped back. The distance returned. "Good work today," he said. "I meant what I said in the meeting." "About what?" "That you shouldn't have to prove yourself twice, just because others are blind the first time." My voice came out softer than I intended. "Thank you." He hesitated by the door. "Get some sleep, Miss Collins. Tomorrow, going to be harder." "Good night, Mr. Raven." He nodded once and left. The room felt colder after he was gone, even with his jacket still draped over my chair, the faint scent of cedar and rain clinging to the fabric. I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the city through the window. I was supposed to hate him, distrust him, remember what his family did to mine. But every time he let that mask slip, every time he showed a sliver of decency, I felt the ground beneath my anger start to crack. And that terrified me more than anything RavenCorp ever could. The office was never truly quiet. Even past midnight, the hum of servers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights gave the building its own pulse, steady, unyielding, like RavenCorp itself. I told myself I was just finishing reports. That was half true. The other half sat open on the glowing screen before me, a folder buried under 4 layers of restricted access. RavenCorp Legal, 2017 Whitlock case. My father's name was right there, tucked into the metadata. The man who'd lost everything because of this company. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every instinct screamed to close the file, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. Not after years of silence, of wondering what really happened to him. Click. Documents loaded. Contracts, emails, board transcripts. Most redacted, but one phrase jumped out, stark and undeniable. Authorization granted by Raven SR. Ethan's father. My throat went dry. So it was true. RavenCorp had been involved directly in the collapse of my father's firm. The pieces I'd been chasing for years were right here, hidden behind digital walls and NDAs. And now I was inside them. Miss Collins. The sound of his voice hit like a gunshot. I froze. Slowly I turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, shadows slicing across his face from the hall lights. No jacket, sleeves rolled up, eyes like storm clouds about to break. I didn't even hear him come in. "What?" he said softly, dangerously. "Are you doing on my computer?" My pulse stuttered. I was just... "Don't," he cut in. "Don't lie to me." He crossed the room, slow, deliberate steps. I backed away instinctively until my hip hit the desk. The glow from the monitor reflected in his eyes as he glanced at the screen, and when he saw the file name, something in him shifted. His expression went from cold to unreadable. "You were digging into the Whitlock case," he said, not a question. I swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to. "To what? Spy on your employer? Commit corporate theft?" I had a reason. "Then say it." The air between us went razor sharp. My voice came out before I could stop it. "Because my father's company was destroyed by yours." Silence, thick, crushing. He blinked once, the only sign that the words landed. "What did you just say?" I forced myself to hold his gaze, even as my hands trembled. "My father, Daniel Collins, he was the CFO of Whitlock Industries. Your father's legal team buried him in false charges. We lost everything. I came here to find out the truth." For a heartbeat, the world felt too small for both of us. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're telling me you joined RavenCorp under false pretenses?" "Yes," I whispered. "I did." His silence was worse than his anger. He didn't shout, didn't curse. He just looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing a stranger for the first time. Then softly, "You think I knew?" "I didn't know what to think," I said. "But when I saw the name on those files, I had to know." He exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. For once, he didn't look composed. He looked human, conflicted. "My father handled that case," he said finally. "I was still in college when it happened." "That doesn't make it any less his company," I said. "Or yours now." I didn't say it did. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was heavy with something else. Something like realization. He turned back to the screen, scanning the open documents. "Half of this is redacted. You won't find what you're looking for here." "Then where is it?" He hesitated. Then, in a tone I'd never heard from him before, "Probably in the archives. My father kept physical copies of everything, including what he didn't want digitized." I blinked. "You're telling me where to look." "I'm telling you I'll look," he said. "With you." I stared at him, stunned. "Why?" He met my eyes, steady, unreadable. "Because if my family ruined yours, I need to know it too." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something else, Raw, honest, dangerous. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But the way he said it made me believe he wasn't lying. For the first time since I'd walked into RavenCorp, we weren't on opposite sides. We were standing on the same line, staring at the same ghost. The night air inside RavenCorp was different when everyone else was gone. No hum of printers, no clipped footsteps, just silence, the kind that presses against your skin. Ethan swiped his security card, and the glass door to the restricted archives slid open with a soft click. The scent of dust and paper filled the air, older than the sleek steel and glass upstairs, like a secret the company pretended didn't exist. I followed him inside, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. He didn't speak as he moved down the aisles, fingers brushing the edges of old file boxes. For someone who usually radiated control, he looked almost uncertain, like a man looking for ghosts he didn't want to find. "Your father kept these records?" I asked quietly. "He kept everything," Ethan said. "Every contract, every memo, every mistake he didn't want anyone else to see." We started opening boxes. Labels scrawled in ink. Legal 2016, Whitlock Holdings, acquisition memos. My pulse quickened at the last one. Ethan noticed. "Here," he said, pulling it down and setting it on the table. "Go ahead." I lifted the lid. Inside were folders stacked in uneven piles, their corners yellowed. My fingers found one marked Whitlock Partnership Review. The first few pages were standard, board minutes, emails. Then came a photocopy of a signature, Daniel Collins. My breath caught. But next to it, stapled to the same page, was another version, same date, different handwriting. My father's name forged. "I knew it," I whispered. "They falsified his authorization. They made it look like he approved the transfer." Ethan took the page, studying it under the harsh fluorescent light. His expression darkened not at me, but at the document. This isn't just fraud," he said slowly. "It's deliberate. Someone set him up." The air felt heavy. I looked up at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the CEO who terrified half the city. I saw a man realizing the empire he inherited might be built on rot. He met my gaze. "My father signed off on this." I hesitated. "Ethan." He closed the file, jaw tight. "No, don't try to soften it. I need to see it for what it is." We stood there for a long time, the quiet between us almost fragile. The distance that used to feel like power now felt like protection, from the truth, from each other. Finally, I said, "You didn't know, you couldn't have." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "That doesn't make me any less responsible now." There was something raw in his voice, something I hadn't heard before. "Regret. I thought you joined RavenCorp because you wanted revenge," he said. "I did," I admitted. "At first, I wanted to see the people who ruined my father's life pay for it. But now," I exhaled, staring down at the folder between us. "Now I think I just want the truth." When I looked back up, his eyes were on me, steady, searching. "Then we'll find it together." It wasn't a promise of trust, but it was a start. We packed the files back carefully, sealing the box as if to hide what we just uncovered. When we left the archives, the city lights below glowed faintly through the glass walls, distant and cold. For the first time, walking beside Ethan Raven didn't feel like walking next to an enemy. The next morning, I noticed the change in him. The precision that usually defined him was gone, replaced by something heavier, quieter. When he spoke to the board, his words were sharp, but his mind was elsewhere. And when his gaze met mine across the room, I realized something had shifted between us, something irreversible. Because for the first time, I didn't just see my father's enemy. I saw a man trying to make things right. And that was infinitely more dangerous. By the time I got to the office the next morning, the air felt different. Thicker, sharper, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Ethan was already there, not in his usual immaculate calm, but packing near the windows, phone in hand. His tie hung loose, and his coffee sat untouched on the table. "Something happened," I said. He looked up. "My father called." That name alone was enough to make my pulse skip. I'd never met the man, but his shadow hung over this company like a curse. What did he say? Ethan exhaled, the kind of sound that belonged more to defeat than anger. He knows. I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. About the archives. He nodded. He didn't say it directly, but he doesn't have to. He told me to stay focused on expansion and that he doesn't appreciate distractions. That's his way of saying stop digging. A chill went through me. What are you going to do? What we started, he said simply. I'm not stopping until I know everything. There it was again, that quiet steel under his calm exterior. The same man who could freeze a boardroom with one word was now defying the person who'd built his entire world. He moved to his desk and sat, running a hand through his hair. You should step back, though. It's my fight now. No, I said before I could stop myself. It's not just yours. His gaze lifted, sharp and unreadable. Aria. My father's name is on those files. Your father's signature is on the cover-up. We're already both in this. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city stretched behind him, silver and endless, and I thought about how strange it was that the man who once terrified me now looked like someone I wanted to protect. He leaned back, studying me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're not afraid of me anymore. I never was, I said softly, just of what you stood for. His lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. And what do I stand for now? I hesitated then. Change. Something flickered in his eyes. He stood, walking past me to the window. The skyline reflected against the glass, two ghostly figures side by side, the CEO and his assistant, looking like they belonged to two different worlds. But in that reflection, we didn't look like enemies. I don't know where this ends, he said quietly. If we keep going, we might bring down more than just my father, the board, the company, everything. I stepped closer. Then we make sure it's worth it. He turned slightly toward me, and the space between us felt too small. Not crowded, just heavy, a current running under the surface of every word we didn't say. You trust me now? He asked, voice low. I think, I said, my heart thudding. I always did, I just didn't want to. For a second I thought he might say something real, unguarded. But before he could, his phone buzzed on the desk, sharp and intrusive. He glanced at the screen. The name flashing there made his expression harden instantly. Raven SR. Without a word, he silenced it. Another warning, I asked quietly. Probably, he said, but he's too late. His eyes found mine again, and for the first time since I'd met him, there was no distance, no power dynamic, just two people standing at the edge of something bigger than either of them. We'll find the truth, he said, no matter what it costs. And the terrifying part was, I believed him. I used to think the truth would feel like relief. It didn't. It felt like walking into a storm and realizing you're holding the lightning rod. 2 days after Ethan's father's warning, we were back in the archives. He'd locked the door this time. No security cameras, no interruptions. Just us, and the sound of old paper giving up its secrets. Ethan sifted through the ledgers, while I scanned digital backups on a tablet. Every file looked the same until one didn't. A transaction list buried under internal asset transfers, 2017. My father's company name again, a forged signature again. But this time, there was something else. Ethan, I said, look at this. He leaned over, his shoulder brushing mine, close enough for me to feel the tension vibrating under his calm. What am I looking at? Authorized by Aria Collins. For a second, I thought my heart stopped. That's my name, I whispered, but I wasn't even here then. He grabbed another folder, eyes scanning. It's not you. Someone used the same initials. Who? He flipped a page, then froze, his jaw clenched. I stepped closer. Ethan. He turned the paper so I could see. There, under a stack of signatures, was a name I never expected, printed, stamped, and approved. Aria Collins. My best friend. I stared at the page, the letters blurring. No, I breathed. That can't be right, Lily, she's not. Ethan's voice was low, controlled. She joined RavenCorp the same week you did. In legal, wasn't it? I nodded numbly. She said she wanted to look out for me, she said. The realization hit hard, cold and merciless. She's been here longer than she told me, I whispered. She knew about the files. Ethan didn't say anything. His silence was worse than any confirmation. We stood there, the sound of the city far below. The folder opened between us like proof of betrayal neither of us wanted to believe. Finally, he spoke, quiet but certain. We're not the only ones digging. Someone been one step ahead of us. I closed the file, my hands shaking. Then what do we do? He met my eyes. We find her before my father does. And before I could answer, before I could process the fear clawing up my throat, the power in the room cut out. Total darkness. The hum of the servers stopped. Then, from somewhere down the hall, a soft click. Like a door locking, lights went out with a snap, so sharp it felt like the building itself had flinched. For one suspended second, I didn't breathe. Then I felt Ethan's hand find mine, steady, warm, grounding. Stay close, he said. His voice was calm but not relaxed, the kind of calm that hides calculation. The glow from the city bled faintly through the glass walls, just enough for me to see his outline as he moved toward the door. He tried the handle. Click. Locked from the outside. Someone knew we'd be here, I whispered. He didn't answer, just reached for his phone. Dead signal. Mine too. The servers had stopped humming. The silence was unnerving, like the whole floor was holding its breath. He turned back toward me. There's an emergency exit through the storage wing. It opens manually. We found our way through the dark, guided only by phone flashlights and adrenaline. When we finally forced the exit door open, the cold air of the stairwell hit like freedom. We didn't stop until we reached the street. The building loomed behind us, silent, perfect, guilty. Ethan's jaw was tight. This wasn't random, he muttered. Someone wanted that file gone. I glanced at the folder still clutched in my hand. Then they'll come for this. He looked at me, eyes unreadable. Then we'll make sure they don't get it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's name on that page. The doubt, the fear, the storm of questions, it wouldn't stop. At 2:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message, no contact name, just a string of numbers. Lily, don't freak out, I'm safe. My heart nearly gave out. Aria, where are you? No reply for a full minute. Then, Lily, still inside RavenCorp systems. I found something in the legal archive, it's bad. You were right to dig. But listen carefully, Ethan's father isn't cleaning up someone else's mess. I frowned. What do you mean? Lily, he started it. The next message came before I could respond. Lily, don't tell Ethan yet. Not until I'm sure. I'll send proof when I can, just be careful. The blackout wasn't for you, it was for him. Then silence. Her number disappeared, deleted, like she'd never been there at all. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred. Ethan's father, the files, the lies. All of it circling back to the man, whose warning suddenly made perfect sense. Somewhere deep down, I knew it. This wasn't just about my father's downfall anymore. It was about what RavenCorp was built on. And the man standing next to me in that darkness might be the only one who could help me destroy it. The city outside his office was drenched in gold and glass, lights smearing across the night like secrets trying to hide. It was past midnight when I went to see him. I told myself it was just to drop off the reports. But the truth, I needed to see him, to make sure he was still here, still real. Ethan looked up when I entered, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The man who usually commanded rooms now looked almost human, exhausted, haunted but beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. You should have gone home, he said quietly. So should you. He huffed a low laugh, the kind that wasn't really a laugh at all, and turned back to the city. Home feels overrated lately. I hesitated, then placed the folder on his desk. Lily texted me. That got his attention. He straightened, his eyes sharp. Is she safe? Yes. She found something, but she doesn't want me to tell you yet. He frowned. Why not? Because it's about your father. Silence stretched between us, heavy, alive. He didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, he walked around the desk, stopping just a few feet away. Aria, he said, voice low, almost pleading. If there's something I need to know. I shook my head. I can't, not until she confirms it. Something flickered in his eyes, not anger, not betrayal, just weariness. You don't trust me. I do, I whispered. That's the problem. He took a step closer. The air shifted. His cologne, faint, clean, maddening, wrapped around me. Then what are you afraid of? He asked softly. You, I wanted to say, losing control, losing you. Instead, I said, of being wrong about you. His hand lifted, slow, hesitant, and for a moment it hovered just near my cheek. The warmth of it was unbearable. Then he stopped, inches away, like touching me might burn everything down. His voice dropped lower. You think I haven't wanted to cross that line? My heart stuttered. Ethan. He exhaled sharply, pulling his hand back like it took everything he had. You should go before I make a mistake we can't take back. I should have left. But I didn't. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved, just the quiet hum of the city and the weight of everything we couldn't say pressing in. Then I turned and walked out, pulse wild, skin alive, every nerve humming with what almost happened. Behind me, I heard him whisper my name. Soft, uncertain, dangerous. And for the first time since I started this job, I didn't know if I wanted to run or fall. If charm were currency, Julian Hayes could have bought the whole building twice. He arrived on a Monday morning, the kind of morning that smelled like coffee, rain, and impending chaos. The entire office buzzed about him before he even stepped off the elevator. Transferred from the London branch, whispered someone by the copier. Strategic operations, big deal, added another. Good looking, muttered someone else, and half the floor turned to stare as the elevator doors opened. And there he was. Tall, disarmingly calm, with a lazy grin that felt both genuine and practiced. His accent was smooth, easy, the kind people trusted too quickly. Julian Hayes, he introduced himself, offering his hand. And you must be Aria Collins. I blinked. We've met. Not officially, he said with that charming smile. But your name comes up often, impressive reputation. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. By noon, Julian had already made himself comfortable, joking with department heads, casually leaning against desks like he'd been here for years. I caught Ethan watching him from his glass office more than once, that unreadable CEO expression firmly in place. By the third time, I knocked on his door. You've been glaring at him for an hour. Ethan didn't look up from his laptop. Observation, not glaring. Right, I said, folding my arms, and I only come in here for the view. That earned a ghost of a smirk. He's too smooth. No one integrates that quickly unless they've done their homework. I raised a brow, or maybe he's just competent. Ethan's gaze finally met mine. You sound defensive. I sound rational. He leaned back in his chair, that infuriating half-smile tugging at his mouth. Rational, Then explain why he spent half the morning at your desk. I rolled my eyes. He asked about the audit files, and I didn't realize my desk was part of your jurisdiction, Mr. Raven. His tone dipped lower, just slightly. Everything in this building is my jurisdiction. The air thickened. For a moment, neither of us said a word, just the soft hum of the city below and that dangerous undercurrent that had started to feel too familiar. Finally, I exhaled. You don't have to worry, he's just being friendly. Ethan's eyes darkened. That's exactly what worries me. By late evening, the office was quiet again. I was finishing up reports when Julian appeared beside my desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loose. You work too hard, he said lightly. I've heard that before, I murmured, not looking up. He chuckled. From Raven, I assume. He has that controlling edge. My pen froze midline. Julian noticed. Don't look so shocked. I've read enough to know the man's a perfectionist, and he doesn't like people touching what's his. Something about the way he said what's his sent a chill down my spine. Before I could reply, he placed a small envelope on my desk. You dropped this earlier, he said. I didn't. But when I looked inside, my breath caught. A photo, blurred but unmistakable, me and Ethan in his office, the night of the blackout. His hand near my face, our proximity impossible to misinterpret. Julian smiled, polite, practiced, knowing. Might want to be careful, Aria, people talk. And with that, he walked away, leaving the scent of cologne and suspicion in his wake. I stared at the photo, my pulse hammering. Julian Hayes wasn't just here for business. He was watching. And whoever sent him already knew too much. RavenCorp felt different the next morning. Too quiet, too polite, like the walls already knew something I didn't. People glanced up when I passed, then looked away just a beat too late. By the time I reached my desk, a cold shiver had already settled in my spine. Ethan's assistant appeared 10 minutes later. He wants to see you. I told myself it was a normal meeting. That lie lasted until I saw his face. He stood by the window, the skyline painting his silhouette in gold. No jacket, no smile, no mask. Just Ethan Raven's sharp edges and tired eyes. He turned slowly. Someone's circulating a photo of us. My stomach dropped. Julian. He nodded once. I've already contained it, but the board saw it. My father did too. The name hung in the air like smoke. He called this morning, Ethan said quietly. Said you're a liability, that you were sent here to dig into RavenCorp. I flinched. And you? I told him he was wrong. He stepped closer. Tell me he is Aria. My throat tightened. There it was, the moment I'd been running from since day one. I came here for the truth, I said finally. Because your father destroyed my father's company. He framed him. I just wanted proof. Silence, the kind that doesn't echo, it just breaks. Ethan's jaw clenched. And me. You were never supposed to be part of this. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, disbelief, something darker. Then, before either of us could speak again, my phone buzzed. Lily, he knows. Get out. I looked up, heart pounding. Ethan. The office door burst open. 2 board members entered, followed by a man I'd only ever seen in newspaper photos, Alexander Raven. Ethan's father. He smiled like a man greeting an old acquaintance, not an enemy. Miss Collins, we finally meet. I couldn't move. Alexander turned to his son. I warned you about trusting the wrong people. Ethan's voice was cold steel. Don't. But his father just nodded toward me. She's not who she says she is. Ethan stepped between us. You're lying. Alexander's eyes glinted. Am I? Then ask her who signed the transfer that started all this. He tossed a folder onto the desk. My name, A. Collins, stamped across the top. I stared, breath caught somewhere between panic and rage. That's forged. Alexander smiled faintly. Of course it is, but the world won't care. Then he turned to leave. Clean this up, Ethan, before it cleans you out. The door shut behind him, leaving nothing but silence and the sound of my pulse in my ears. Ethan looked at me, the man who used to terrify everyone else now looking utterly lost. Aria, he whispered, what have they done to us? I didn't have an answer, only the crushing realization that the real war had